All right, the next section we're going to look at for 2.4 is pages 43 to 45. And we're going to read about why Europeans came to California. So after John Bautista de Anza led the Spanish settlers to Alta California, the settlements began, first in San Gabriel, then in Monterey, and then in San Francisco. At the heart of each settlement was a mission headed by a priest interested in teaching Native Americans about Christianity. To keep the mission safe, the Spanish government built forts called presidios on or around them. Soldiers protected the forts. They also explored the area, enforced laws, and delivered mail to the settlers. Along with these duties, they were expected to grow food and to raise livestock. So again, when you're in here, you can use the sticky note option to take notes. You can use the highlight option to highlight. If you're printing it out, which is the better option, you can write on your pages directly, make notes, and highlight using different colors. So those are all important annotating skills. So we know that at the heart of each settlement was a mission headed by priests interested in teaching Native Americans about Christianity. So that was the point of missions. So we know that there were a lot of settlements, and we know they were in San Gabriel, Monterey, and in San Francisco. To keep the mission safe, Spanish government built forts called presidios. So they basically built these around the missions to keep them safe. We know that they were protected by soldiers. So we know those soldiers were in charge of exploring the areas, enforcing laws, and delivering mail. Along with these duties, they were also expected to grow food and to raise livestock. Now, the soldiers were from all areas, including Mexico, Spain, and the Philippines. Some soldiers were African. They carried weapons and wore a thick leather jacket that protected them from knives or arrows. They did not have an easy life. They often did not get paid and had little food. So we know the soldiers were from Mexico, Spain, and the Philippines. Okay, so those are the areas that our soldiers came from. Or they were African. We know that they carried weapons and wore a thick leather jacket to protect them from knives or arrows. And we know that they often didn't get paid and had little food, so they didn't have an easy life. Women settlers cleaned the forts, prepared food, and watched the children. Children shared the chores and helped care for the farms. Instead of going to a regular school, they learned how to ride horses and take care of a ranch. So over here, we're going to pull out the important parts. Women settlers cleaned the forts, prepare food, watch the children. So we know the children shared in the chores. And they learned how to ride horses and take care of the ranch. Soldiers and some hired Native Americans lived in pueblos nearby. The Native Americans worked for the settlers. The presidios protected the pueblos in return. So down here, we're going to write what the role for each person was in the presidio. So what did the soldiers do? You're going to write that in the box, and you can go up and find that information. What did the women do? What did the priests do? What did the children do? And what did the Native Americans do? So over here, we can go back and finish highlighting this last section. Soldiers and some hired Native Americans lived in pueblos nearby. So we know that the Native Americans worked for the settlers, and the presidios protected the pueblos. So all of these answers are all part of the highlighted text that we just went through. You can go ahead and transfer that information. Over here, we have a diagram of a presidio in San Diego, and this was drawn in 1820. So your mission is in the center, and the presidio is basically what surrounds it to keep it safe from the outside. Now, our next section is about missions. Why were missions built? In 1769, the Spanish government created a settlement in California before England or Russia could settle it. They called it New Spain. They sent Father Junipero Serra and Juan Crespi to Alta to build the first mission. The Spanish government wanted to gain control over the Native Americans and make them loyal to them. Father Serra wanted to convert them to Christianity. So let's go through and highlight the important parts. In 1769, the Spanish government created a settlement in California, and they called it New Spain. Okay, so we know that's the most important part in that first sentence. We know that they sent these two priests, Father Junipero Serra and Juan Crespi, to Alta to build the first mission because they wanted to gain control over the Native Americans and wanted to convert them to Christianity. So those are our key points in that paragraph. Missions were built close to the Pacific Ocean, so there would be plenty of water and resources for building. So this is something you're going to notice about a lot of missions, is that they're going to be located near the ocean or near a large body of water. The soil was also rich for growing crops. These sites later became large cities like San Diego and San Francisco. All right. How did Native Americans end up in the missions? Father Serra offered the Native Americans gifts so they would come to the missions. At first, they were very interested in the Spanish way of life. They liked their tools and their farming methods. They learned how to grow plants and raise farm animals. But soon the Native Americans were doing hard labor at the missions. They were expected to live at the missions, go to religious classes, and learn the Spanish language. Father Serra baptized about 54,000 of them. Let's go through and highlight our important information here. So we know that the way they got them into the missions was they offered them gifts. And we know that at first they were interested in the Spanish ways of life. So they liked the tools and farming methods. They learned to grow plants and raise farm animals. But soon they were doing hard labor at the missions. They were expected to live at the mission, go to religious classes, and learn the Spanish language. And we know that Father Serra baptized about 54,000 of them. What was life like on a mission? Unmarried women lived in dorms with mats to sleep on. Young men stayed in another dorm across the courtyard from the girls' building. Families lived in houses near the dorms. A bell woke everyone in the morning for work. Men worked in the gardens, made bricks, and took care of the livestock. Some men also worked in the military for the Spanish and fought in wars. Women made soap, candles, and food. Both men and women were expected to dress like Europeans. When Native Americans started to live like the Spanish, they were considered to be civilized. The civilized Native Americans would become supervisors in the missions. So let's go back and take a look at what life was like. Oops. So we know the unmarried women lived in dorms. The young men stayed in another dorm. And we know that families lived in houses near the dorms. A bell woke everyone in the morning for work. We know that the men worked in the gardens, made bricks, and took care of the livestock. So those are like the animals. We know that the men also worked in the military for the Spanish and fought in wars. The women made soap, candles, and food. And both men and women were expected to dress like Europeans. We know that when Native Americans started to live like the Spanish, they were considered to be civilized. And they were the group that became supervisors in the missions. So now that we've gathered that information, we're going to read about a day in the Mission San Luis Rey. Mission San Luis Rey was the 18th and largest mission built in California. Built in 1804, it was named after a French king. Built in a valley 5 miles from the ocean, it was located in the present-day city of Oceanside, where the Chumash Indians lived. By 1831, 2,800 Native Americans lived there. Here's a sample schedule of the day-to-day for the day at the mission. So over here, again, important information. 18th and largest mission built in California. We know it was built in 1804. Built in a valley 5 miles from the ocean. Again, this is important. They put them near large bodies of water because of the resources. This is where we have present-day Oceanside, where the Chumash Indians lived. Now, an average day over there, at 6 a.m., they woke up and they would go to Mass for prayer. So that would be their religious activity. At 7 o'clock, breakfast of soup made with grains. At 7:45 is when they began work, where the men tended to the crops and helped with the animals. The women were making clothes, soap, candles, and tending to the garden. The children were helping with the chores after their religious lesson, and the priests were instructing new people and children in religion. So they were getting religious classes. By 12 o'clock, they were having lunch. At 12:45 was their break. At 2 o'clock, they returned to work. At 6 o'clock was the end of the workday, where they all had dinner of soup made with grains. 6:45, they would rest until bedtime, and at 8 o'clock, the women and children must be in bed, and by 9 o'clock, the men must be in bed. So how much time did Native Americans get to rest? So take a look at their rest time, their break time. How much time did Native Americans have to work? So take a look over here. Let's zoom out a little bit so we can see the whole schedule. Now, you see the first break that they have is here at 12:45, and then they have to be back at work at 2 o'clock. So how much time did they spend resting? And look at the time from when they started work to when they finished work, minus that break. How much time did they spend working? Go ahead and fill that in and upload it in the assignment for pages 43 to 45. If you have any questions, let me know. Please make sure you did go through and highlight and make sure that your name and date is on all your pages. Otherwise, I hope you guys have an amazing day, 4th grade. Take care. Bye-bye.